Or is it, it's on? That's scary. Okay. Good morning, everybody. We're here for Models of Technology Integration. How many of you, with a show of hands, actually have a plan for how technology is going to be used? Okay, that's good. That's great. Because a lot of places, what they do is buy the technology, do a little bit of training, and say, go use it. And they don't really know what they're using it for or how they're using it. They just say, use it. And the person who becomes the queen or the king of the PowerPoint slide is recognized as being this great technology guru, which means they know how to use transitions. And it's a lot more than being fantastic with transitions. So we're going to talk about 3 models of technology integration. The SAMR model, number 1, and Carolyn and Sue, which are to my right, are going to discuss that for a little bit, for about 10 minutes or so. And then we're going to talk about TPACK, and Bill is going to talk, or William, it says on the slide, but Bill is going to talk about the TPACK model. And then we're going to talk about the Technology Integration Matrix, or TIM, and James, who is he's virtually with us from Florida. I have a video from him, and I'll kick in some at the end on that. And then we're going to open it up and just have a discussion about the 3 different models and see how it goes from there. There is a URL here, and I'll have it on the very last slide, and a QR code to a book that's been put together. And the first chapter of the book kind of discusses all 3 of these models also. That came out of a project that several of us did a year ago. So with that said, let's move to turn my mic off. Is mine off? No. So the table mic. Or you want the clicker? That one's up. No. Oh, here.
I'm sure it was one for it. All right. Say who we are. What mic do you want to use?
I think he's turned you on.
Okay. I'm Caroline Habig. I'm an instructional technology coordinator in Lincolnshire, Illinois, and just finished my first year in that position. And, you know, the SAMR model, we're really going to talk, Sue and I are going to talk about how it relates to using technology to really support authentic work by students. And how do we frame conversations with teachers so that it goes beyond what Gordon was saying, oh, just use the tools. And how do we create that common vocabulary? So we've both been using the SAMR model, and we're going to talk through what it means for us in our district and the teachers we work with.
I'm Sue Gorman. I'm the Director of Innovation at Racine Unified School in Racine, Wisconsin, located between Chicago and Milwaukee. I'm at SJ Gorman on Twitter. So happy to be here. I think for our district too, the biggest thing is just to make sure that technology really becomes invisible, and that the learning, and that's the priority that takes hand, is the learning that we're doing. It's not about the technology at all. So that is a part that we're really excited about when we use a SAMR model. Teachers can evaluate where they are on that continuum. And it's really exciting to see friends really grow in what they were doing. And like Gordon says, from going to somebody that you think, oh, they used something, you know, on, and that was a higher level thinking or higher order, to really redefining what they're doing. And it's just an exciting time to be in education and to see what all you guys are doing with it. So excited to be here.
We're going to show you a video clip that does a nice overview of just what the SAMR model is, what examples are. I think, you know, in my role, I'm constantly looking for ways to just articulate and differentiate the different levels of SAMR to our faculty.
This is the SAMR in 120 seconds.
This is the SAMR model in 120 seconds. The SAMR model is a framework that provides a lens for viewing technology integration in the classroom. The first level is substitution, or the idea that a block is a block no matter where it is or how you access it. This would be like using Google Docs as any other word processor. The new tech replaces the old tech, but it does not change the task. The next level is augmentation. At this level, the tech is still a substitute, but provides more functionality as students work to complete the same task. The ability to share your Google Doc in one click and the fact that it saves to the cloud automatically and provides you access from anywhere is an increase in functionality. The next level is modification. Here the ball really gets rolling because the technology is used to redesign parts of the task and transform student learning. Students collaborating on one Google Doc and using the comment feature to provide instant feedback is an example of modification. The final level of SAMR is redefinition. At this level, we're able to design and create new tasks that were once unimaginable. By shifting our perspective from technology just being another block or substitute, we're able to truly start imagining the possibilities. An example of redefinition would be connecting to a classroom across the world through students sharing Google Docs. They would each write their own narrative of the same historical event, using the chat and comment section to discuss the differences. Then students would use the Voice Comments app to discuss the differences they noticed and embed this in their class website as a culture walk. To recap, substitution is the same task, new tech replaces old tech. Augmentation is the same task, but the tech increases functionality. Modification, we're able to redesign parts of the task. Redefinition, we're able to create new tasks once unimaginable. As we move from substitution to redefinition, we're moving from enhancing to transforming student learning.
So I really like that video because it's short, sweet. I love how she breaks it down, especially since so many schools are embracing Google Apps for education. I think it's very real. And really, it's something that Sue and I have always kind of talked about is how, with the SAMR model, sometimes it's about looking at certain activities and how do we help teachers to understand how to create higher order thinking activities, because in both of our roles we're focused on that, right? And I love it when a teacher says, hey, you're actually a teacher. It's like, well, yes, and that's how it should be, right? It's about instruction, and it's like kind of a backhanded compliment, but it's a good thing. And really, the SAMR model, I think, helps teachers and helps me in conversations with teachers to guide them towards, how do we go beyond just using the tool to redo what we've already done? And I often like we're rolling out one-to-one iPads right now in a school of 4,000 students. And really, how do we go beyond and do things we've never been able to capture? And walking and working with teachers to explore, what are you already doing? That's something I always start with. What are you already doing? What's it look like? I don't care if technology is a part of the equation or not at that point. And then working through to figure out what it can be.
I really like this model here. This new design that you see in front of us was developed by our colleague, ADE Scott Meach. He's amazing. He's at Smeach on Twitter, so you must follow him. But he redrew this really to point out the modification and redefinition parts of the SAMR model. But I think what happens when you use SAMR is to really realize the new opportunities of how much our learning should be student-driven. And that's where you're really going to see the transformation of teachers when they do the teaching that they do. Because as you have student-led and student-based projects and facilitators, that's when you're going to really not only see the gains in student achievement, but also the engagement. And so really to step back from how we have done things before as facilitators and then go ahead and have it be student-led is, I think, the part that really makes the SAMR possible to redefine. And we have tons of examples, but like Caroline said, we like this video, and we have many others that we can show you too if you tweet us or direct message and show you different examples of not only how Google can redefine the classroom, but different apps and things like that. We do have a wheel that will show you that has the connection with Blooms and SAMR as well. So just some great strategies for you.
And just out of curiosity, is anyone using the SAMR model in their own district right now? Neat. I was just curious. Try to get to know you. Mm-hmm. This is the model that Sue was talking about, and if your eyes are better than mine, maybe you can read it better. But it really is kind of nice because and I shared this with some colleagues recently in different districts who do similar roles to myself, and they're like, oh, that actually really could be helpful for teachers to kind of think through what their, how these different tools are. Because I personally don't like to focus on apps when I work with teachers, because I think then it becomes all app. Well, in our case, because we're iPad. But it's, really got to think about what is the overall purpose. And I think this wheel is a nice visual to do that.
And I do like how it overlaps with Bloom's here. So you can kind of see some of the apps. And it's just like Caroline said, some of the apps can be used in many different levels. But once again, it is not about the tool. We want to make that tool invisible. We want to make it about the learning and how that really helps our teachers. So also, I'd say, too, one of the biggest things with using the SAMR model, and when we do really redefine the classroom, is the fact that we should have them connected globally. I can't even tell you how awesome that has been for our students. In the district I live in, we're a very high-poverty school district, and so our students don't have the opportunities to travel or to see different places. So every time we try to, when we are helping our teachers redefine their lessons, say, who are the experts out there in what you're doing? So just even when in our youngest classrooms, instead of ever using the globe again, we use Google Earth on a daily basis. We're going to fly to the continents, friends. Let's go there. Or if we're doing a story, say the stories of Madeline, for the little guys in Paris. So we go ahead and, fly there. And so right do our 360 degrees. And then we try to pair up with classrooms in other places so we can have that authentic learning. And then we blog about it and we write about it and, we post about it and we put our school or our classroom tweets on there so we can say who else knows something about Paris, who else can share with us some authentic learning that is done there. And that is when the kids get so excited. We had a couple of students who actually believe they were in Paris, and they go home, we were in Paris today, and it was awesome. And so those are the kind of activities. And then we bring in some things with even cooking. Okay, let's do croissants. What does it taste like? Because you're almost there doing those kind of things. And those are the kind of lessons, and people thought, oh, it's going to be so much work to do this, to redefine, and oh, this and that. And they said, no, it's easier. And also the fact that the students, like I said, the engagement level. We were having some problems sometime with attendance. And now that we're really, like I said, redefining our classrooms, not about the tool, but just about the learning, just about the outcomes. We have better attendance at our school right now. Kids are just so engaged to come. And so we're starting with teachers and really elevating that and saying, okay, let's put our best practices out there and share it. But the more we can collaborate together, friends, that is the key. And if you have any interest in collaborating with our district, we're a district of 21,000, we would love to have you join us at any time. So just either on Twitter, let me know, and we can do some of those collaborations and help your schools redefine too, or to get some great examples, because we'd love to help.
And one more thing I'd like to add is sometimes I notice that teachers get caught up in, and even sometimes, and I'll admit this, when our administrators talk about, expectations for how teachers are to use technology, I think people get caught up in, well, wait, where am I on this matrix or rubric or whatever it is you're using for here, the SAMR levels, and they get kind of tied up in that. And sometimes, certain tasks, you got to think, yeah, substitution might be what you need. Sometimes you have to take notes. Yes, you can go above and beyond. Yeah, we can look at tools that help you take that further, and then instructionally, how can you maybe share and make that more collaborative. But, sometimes it's like, I find that sometimes people get tied up in, well, where am I? Especially in an assessment world, right? I know this year we're living through Danielson for the first time at my new district, and everyone's all about, where am I? And it's exciting, I think, to help teachers remember that let's be practical, let's do the best we can, but let's not get too tied up in trying to rank where we are. So
I just put the resources up because I was checking on Twitter, and some of you had tweeted, ooh, I want to know where all those resources are. So we did include that. But once again, friends, I would say for the SAMR part too, you're not alone. We are all in this amazing educational world together just to make the world a better place for our students, and we would just like to collaborate and help. So even if you're at the substitution level and say, hey, where do I go from here? I have one iPad in my classroom, or I have, just something, whatever your tool is, how to start or how to get collaborating globally, how can I best leverage what I have in my classroom? And that's what the conversation we want to have, friends. So just please make sure that we can collaborate that way, and we can bring you to those levels and really redefine what you're doing in the classroom. Thank you very much.
Good morning. So like SAMR, TPACK gives you a structure, a framework for you to think about technology and how you're using it, and making sure that it's really not about the technology, but it's about student learning. So how many people are familiar with pedagogical content knowledge? Schulman? Okay, I anticipate a lot of people would. For those of you who maybe haven't heard of it, just quickly, Lee Schulman back in the 80s came up with this notion of pedagogical content knowledge, a specialized sort of knowledge that all teachers need to have. And what Schulman said was that all teachers need to have a deep understanding of their discipline, whatever the subject matter is that they teach. In addition, he recognized that there are aspects of pedagogy, the how to teach component of teacher knowledge, that all teachers have in common. For instance, all teachers, no matter what your discipline, need to know about child development, need to know about things like direct instruction, how to scaffold learning, and so forth. But then something interesting happens when you combine these two things, which is what this Venn diagram illustrates. You get this specialized type of knowledge called pedagogical content knowledge. For example, think about how the subject matter of an English teacher, when it interacts with pedagogy, how the English teacher might scaffold instruction differently than, say, a science teacher or a phys ed teacher, or my area, a music teacher. So pedagogical content knowledge is unique to each discipline and requires an understanding of the connections between subject matter and pedagogy. Okay, there we go. More recently, two professors from Michigan State University, Punya Mishra and Matthew Kaler, built on Schulman's ideas by adding a technology knowledge component to the pedagogical content knowledge model, creating technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge, or TPACK for short, because that's a mouthful to say. The TPACK model, you might also see this referred to as TPCK. That's what they originally called it, and then they needed a good way to be able to say the acronym easily, and so they bought a vowel and added the and in there. So TPACK, which it will be referred to from this point on. The TPACK model provides a way to conceptualize how technology can be integrated into teaching and learning. And in this model, the technology is really conceptualized as a tool to further curricular goals rather than as an end in itself. Sometimes when people get very excited about technology, and I've probably been guilty of this, maybe you have too, you really start getting too technocentric and you think all about all the whiz-bang features and, like Gordon said, the cool transitions you can do and all that sort of stuff. And we lose sight a little bit maybe of what we're really using the technology for, which is to help students learn. And so one thing that I really like about the TPACK model is that it really attempts to keep that student learning as the focus. So integrating technology isn't about technology, it's primarily about content and effective instructional practices. So let me give you an example of TPACK in real life, and this is my real life. And this comes from actually my role in life as a parent. My son, who is now going to be a sophomore in college, when he was a freshman, he was taking honors geometry in high school. When he was a freshman in high school. This was a very challenging course for Michael, my son, and as his dad, I wanted to help him. But it had been a few years since I had thought about geometry, and actually some of the things that they were covering in this class I'm not sure we ever had in high school. And so he was frustrated. I was frustrated because I didn't know how to help him. But let me just kind of explain a typical lesson in Michael's class So the objective of a lesson might be something like calculating tangent chord angles in a circle. Everybody remembers how to do that? I didn't. In Michael's class, there were no outside resources really available to him. The pedagogy that was in use in the class was very traditional. The teacher stood at the chalkboard, worked out the problems on the chalkboard, finished that problem, erased it, it was gone. They had a textbook, but the textbook, this was an honors class, and the textbook kind of used like a discovery approach, and so it didn't spell out sort of the step-by-step procedures for working out all this, so that wasn't real helpful after the fact either. So being the academic that I am, I teach at the college level, I look for books on this, and we got things like Geometry for Dummies and things like that, which helped some, at least it helped me. But my son, being of a different generation, when he wants to learn something, he doesn't go to books. He goes to other sources. Primarily, YouTube is actually one of his go-to sources. And so he was looking around on YouTube, and he came across a YouTube channel that was put together by a teacher in some other part of the country. And it just so happened that she was working out of the same textbook, was at approximately the same point in the class as my son's teacher was, but her class was a little bit differently, worked a little bit differently. Instead of working out the problems on the board, it was really the same pedagogy. It was still kind of a direct instruction model where she was talking through the problems, working them out, but instead of working them out on the board, she had an Elmo device, and she was working them out under that. This was then connected to a computer and was being recorded. Then after the class, she would upload what she'd done in class that day to YouTube, and students could go back and look at it later. Parents who wanted to help their children could go back and look at it. They could rewatch it as many times as they needed to, so they didn't miss a step. And my son, who was in a different part of the country, and I could look at it too. So it transformed the way my son was able to do in this class. He ended up doing well, and I attribute it mainly to these YouTube videos that this teacher who didn't know my son or have any connection to our school or anything put up. So she was able to provide this added benefit to her students because she had a different slant on how technology could support her pedagogy. Again, it was the same content, it was the same essential pedagogy, direct instruction, but because of the technology and her understanding of how the technology could transform the pedagogy and make the content clearer than in a more traditional format, it completely changed the whole dynamics of the learning situation. So this is what the model looks like. And right here, to begin with, we have content knowledge. And all teachers need to know the subject matter that they teach. I think that's obvious to all of us. Next, we have pedagogical knowledge. We've talked about that before. These are the general principles of teaching that are common among all teaching disciplines. So things like planning instruction, general assessment principles, motivational theories, all those sort of things. Pedagogical content knowledge, slide behind here, pedagogical content knowledge, which we talked about before. It's unique for each teaching discipline. So my discipline is music. Once upon a time I was a high school band director, so just think about how the way I would manage my classroom if my classroom was a football field and I was working with a marching band as opposed to somebody in a science laboratory or a math teacher or a phys ed teacher or an English teacher or somebody like that. Next we have technology knowledge. So in the TPACK model, this is a knowledge of general technologies, digital and otherwise, that are pretty much standard and required for teaching and learning. So this includes things like having general technological literacy about knowing how to operate a computer, understanding how to use common software tools such as word processors, spreadsheets, web browsers, and so forth. Then we have the intersection of technology and content, which ends up being called technological content knowledge. And this is how technology is used in a content area, as well as how the content area may be impacted by the technology. So it's not just how technology is used in the content area of the school, but how is the technology used in the content area out in the rest of the world. And so I'll give you an example from my content area, music. If you think a little bit about how digital audio has transformed the recording industry, everything from recording itself to editing to producing to distributing and consuming, think iTunes and Spotify and Google Play and all those sort of things. Digital technologies have really transformed how we listen to music, how we acquire music, how it's produced. Then we have technological pedagogical knowledge, which is the interaction of technology knowledge and pedagogical knowledge. So this is an understanding of the affordances and constraints. Those are two words that you hear used with this model. So affordances basically means what are the benefits of the technology, and constraints are what limitations might the technology put on how we approach this particular learning objective. So this is understanding the affordances and constraints of common technologies that are used for teaching and learning across disciplines. So all sorts of teachers. So example, an interactive whiteboard would be an example. Is pretty much any teacher can use this in some capacity, and understanding the basic procedures of developing an interactive lesson that utilizes a whiteboard with an entire classroom of students. And then finally, right in the center of the model where all these things intersect with each other is TPACK, technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge. So technology knowledge, pedagogy knowledge, and content knowledge are all necessary, but it's in the way they overlap and interact that affects a teacher's choices regarding the use of specific technologies, pedagogies, and even the specific content to be taught. You may become aware of a particular technology that allows you to teach a content that before was very difficult to get at. Again, let me use an example from my discipline. Music composition, creating music, being able to notate music has been something that music teachers have wanted to address with their students. They valued that. They understood how much benefit there would be to students to learning how to compose. But it was always very difficult in the past for a lot of reasons. For one thing, you compose something and then who would perform it? And really the composition process isn't complete until we hear the music reproduced. But now with computers, with music notation software, with programs like GarageBand and other music sequencing programs, students can actually very quickly compose. They can get immediate feedback on that. And so it allows a certain part of musical content to be addressed, whereas before that was more difficult. And that's because of the technology. The example I gave you before about my son's math class, here the pedagogy was being transformed because of the technology. So these can all interact with each other. One can influence each other at any one point in time. One may be more important than the other. This all happens within a context. We all teach in a particular situation, and that does influence what we can do and how we do it. And that's the circle that's around the outside of the model. So this includes things like the physical nature of your classroom, the technologies that are available. Obviously, if you're in a one-to-one program, that context is different than if you have two computers in your classroom, or you have to schedule the computer lab to go do things. All these real-world things. So that's another thing I like about this model, is that it does recognize that we all do work within a particular instructional context, and that does have an influence on what we do. So, how do you develop your TPACK? Well, you develop all three of these areas, I think. Technology, keep learning about your content, keep learning about new pedagogies, but you consciously think about how they connect and how they might align. And a good place to start, I think, are the learning activity types that have really been spearheaded by Judy Harris and Mark Hofer from the College of William and Mary. If you're not familiar with the Learning Activity Types Wiki, that is listed there. A URL is listed for that. And you can go there, and in most of the subject areas, including art and music and phys ed, there are some learning activity types up there. And what these are, they're kind of a cheat sheet to help you get started in thinking about how common instructional outcomes are aligned with activities that are typical that teachers in certain disciplines utilize, and some ideas about technologies that might support those learning activities. So take a look at those if you're not familiar with them. Let your teachers know about them. When you're trying to really get started in thinking about this, really if you're truly a beginner, it can be very difficult to try to make these connections, and I think the learning activity types are a good way to start. Another thing that I believe in is that we need to think about ourselves and the teachers that we work with and support becoming what's called in the literature adaptive experts. So routine experts are what we probably typically think of when we talk about somebody who has expertise. And these are people that over the years have developed a core set of competencies that they apply throughout their lives, and they get better and better at it, more efficient, and really are fluent in a particular area. In contrast, adaptive experts are more likely to change their core competencies, and they continue to expand the breadth and depth of their expertise. So as they restructure these core ideas, their beliefs, their competencies over time, they may reduce their efficiency in the short run, but it makes them more flexible in the long run. So think about when you're learning a new technology, and sometimes it would just be easier to do it the old-fashioned way, do it by hand or do it using some previous technology, because there is a startup cost when we're learning something new, and it makes us less efficient in the short run. But an adaptive expert realizes that, they work through that, and they realize that by learning this new thing, it's going to expand their breadth of understanding and allow them maybe to approach a problem in a new manner. One thing Gordon asked us to address was how might you assess the different models that we're talking about. And there's a variety of tools. If you go to tpack.org, that's kind of the main site to get information about TPACK, tpack.org, that you can find a variety of tools, questionnaires, different instruments that people have used in research and so forth. One of the newer ones that I like is an observation instrument that was developed by Judy Harris and Mark Hofer. And it takes kind of the form of a rubric that describes performances related to curricular goals, so the content, instructional strategies, the pedagogies, and technology, and has questions that deal with how those things are aligned with each other. So that would be one that I would encourage you to look at that I think has real practical application in the classroom. Again, for more information about ways to assess TPACK and just TPACK in general, go to tpack.org, check out the activity types wiki. I think those are good starting places for more information about all of this.
Yeah, more. The next one to talk about is the technology integration matrix. And we have James, who's recorded like an 11-minute video. So let's listen to James.
Hello,
I hit the button. Try again.
Hello, ISTE 2013. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you in person in San Antonio. My name is James Welsh, and I'm from the Florida Center for Instructional Technology. I'm going to introduce you to the technology integration matrix, and I'll describe some evaluation tools that we've developed to complement the TIM. The technology integration matrix, or the TIM, is a model that provides a common language for describing and evaluating technology integration in K-12 settings. The TIM describes 5 attributes of meaningful learning environments across 5 levels of technology integration. The TIM specifically focuses on pedagogy and the pedagogical approach you use to technology integration. It's not specific to hardware or software or lessons, although it includes a lot of examples of all of those things. So to start with, let's talk about those 5 levels. The levels are entry, adoption, adaptation, infusion, and transformation. The levels were adapted from the ACOT studies, and they've been described in further detail as a result of the observations, the interviews, and the survey work that we've done here in Florida schools. These 5 levels represent a continuum of technology use. Now, as we move toward the right on the TIM, we see some general differences in the way technology is used. The most important difference is that in general, as we move toward the right, we see greater student ownership of learning. We expect an entry-level lesson to be teacher-focused and teacher-driven, while a transformation-level lesson is much more likely to be student-centered, with students making meaningful and informed decisions and a lot of times strategic choices about the way that technology is used. So the students are much more in the driver's seat, and they're much more in ownership of their own learning. Another difference involves a shift in the focus of typical lessons from procedural understandings toward conceptual understandings. You can also think about this shift as a shift toward higher order thinking and building higher order thinking skills. We also see general differences in the ways in which technology tools are used. An entry-level lesson is a lot more likely to involve simple, conventional use of technology tools, regardless of which technology tools we're talking about. The use of them is much more likely to be conventional. And as we move toward transformation level, you're much more likely to see unconventional or innovative or complex uses of technology tools. Incidentally, one of the studies that we're working on right now shows some striking evidence of an order of adoption of technology tools among teachers. So in other words, if you tell me what technologies a teacher is using currently, I can tell you the most likely tools that that teacher will be willing to adopt in the near future. We believe that that can be a really crucial piece of information in focusing professional development efforts. Finally, the instructional focus shifts away from the tools and toward the content. So in an entry-level lesson that involves tablet computers, for instance, I might want to build in some time to teach students about the new tools, how to handle them and how to power them off and things like that. Whereas at a transformation level lesson using tablet computers, we aren't going to be talking about the tablets at all. The technology becomes more transparent and the focus is more clearly on the content alone. So that gives you a brief description of the levels of technology integration that we see across the top of the TIM. These levels are similar to the levels described in the SAMR model. The difference is, well, one difference is that in the SAMR model you have 4 levels, and in the TIM you have 5 levels. We differentiate a little bit at the upper end. I think that the first 3 levels probably track pretty closely with the first 3 levels of SAMR, and we have a little bit more differentiation at the top end between infusion and transformation. The other key difference is that the TIM takes those levels and then describes them across 5 attributes of meaningful learning environments. So just briefly, let's take a look at what those attributes are. There we're talking about active, collaborative, constructive, authentic, and goal-directed learning and teaching. These are based on a variety of different studies, prominently including the work of David Jonasson. I'm going to refer you to the TIM website, mytechmatrix.org, where you can get more information about each of these characteristics and how each characteristic changes across the levels of technology integration. On the TIM website, we have detailed within each cell of the matrix descriptions of what typical teacher behavior looks like, what typical student behavior looks like, and the details of what the learning environment supports inside each of those 25 cells. We've also included videos, and that's kind of significant. We have 100 videos currently on the site linked from the matrix. 4 videos within each cell, and those videos, in addition to all the text descriptors that have been generated from a variety of different observations and focus groups and interviews and surveys, we've provided these 100 videos that are keyed to the matrix. And those give specific examples of lessons in classrooms from kindergarten through 12th grade and across right now across 4 different subject areas. The matrix, as I said, currently includes 100 classroom video lessons. We are in the process right now of adding another 50 videos. These new 50 that we're adding will all focus on tablet computers in the classroom, and half of them will be math lessons and half of them will be science lessons. So in the near future, we'll have 150 videos that link from the matrix that give specific examples of what classrooms look like at these different levels within these different characteristics. Now I'd like to shift and talk a little bit about the evaluation tools that we've developed. We have developed and continue to develop a suite called TIM Tools. These are evaluation tools that look at classroom technology integration in a variety of different ways. You're looking right now at a screenshot from the main menu of a district TIM Tools instance. This is a web-based, database-driven system that's available for an annual subscription from our website, mytechmatrix.org. The suite includes a classroom observation tool that guides an observer through the process of doing an observation that ends up with a profile of the lesson that you've observed in terms of the technology integration matrix. It talks about how technology is being used in collaborative ways, in authentic ways, in goal-directed ways within the classroom that you've observed. This observation tool, by the way, works really well as a teacher self-study tool, and it works great on mobile devices. It'll work on any mobile device, including iOS devices. So as an observation tool, it can be useful whether you're doing observations at the district level, at the school level, or if teachers are using it within lesson study groups or self-study groups, looking at their own practice. Another of the tools that is included in this suite is listed here as Technology Uses and Perceptions. That is a survey tool. The TUPS is what we call it, the Technology Uses and Perception Survey. It's a teacher survey tool, and it includes
or something. Let me try this. Go back.
observation tool that guides an observer through the process in 7 different areas. The TUPS looks at a survey tool that gives a variety of different information. They're in very specific ways.
Okay, it's the video. Apparently, it played before, so I don't know why it's struggling. So I'm going to pick up at this point, and let me just jump ahead. So that's showing different than what I'm seeing. Don't you love technology? Let's see what happens. Come on, do your work or something. Okay. Let me just jump ahead.
Level, at the zone level. And you can set up as many.
Okay, pause it there. Let me take it out of AirPlay and put it back where we were and see. I'm just going to jump in here and talk about these things. Get back to that slide and see if we can make it work. Okay. I'm just going to pause it. So we have, no, it's showing the wrong. It's not showing what I'm seeing. So I want to turn off the AirPlay from the projector. And then let me just go back to, let's see if it, yeah, do do you have, oh, I can dig out the,
Really quickly, while he's working on
now,
that,
it's really like slow delay because it now caught up to me, or caught up to what I had before. Okay, well, I'm just going to jump. Well, we'll talk about, so there's the three tools. One is TUPS, which is like a survey tool. See, it's kind of jumping and doing funky stuff. Okay, it's trying to catch up to us. So let's see if we can get there.
I just want to mention something really quickly, is that I actually learned about this model maybe in winter, and I really feel that in some ways it does help teachers, especially certain teachers, elaborate on the conversations we have with the SAMR model. And for sometimes it's up to us as the facilitator of working with teachers to figure out, maybe some models aren't as clear to them, but I'd say this and SAMR, well, they all are very much related. But sometimes you have to also make those connections for people or find resources that help them, put it together in meaningful ways. It's just something I was thinking about.
It's got a mind of its own. So the TUPS is a survey tool, and then the TIMO is a tool that you can sit with in the classroom and observe. See, it's showing you something different than what I'm seeing, but we have, okay, I want to talk and don't worry about what's on the screen, or maybe it will come back. Let me try it. The whole Wi-Fi piece, Apple TV disappeared. So we'll come back to that in this. Is that on? Yeah, it's on there. Okay. Let's see if it's live with me. I'm just going to bring up this slide, and I'm going to leave it there. And we'll just move from this point. So the observation tool, there's two ways. One is you can go into a classroom, you observe, and you mark where people are on this observation tool. And you basically look at the matrix and say, I see this person at these levels. There's another way where you answer questions, and as you answer the questions, it plots the person on this chart. And then this chart is captured in data that then can be used and tracked over time. We've used it in the state of Florida as an observation at the beginning of a project, and then at the end of like a year-long project, and also along the way. And you can see the changes that teachers are making in. We have evidence that by doing a certain project, it made a difference, and we can show how much difference it made because of the tools that we have developed there. The third tool is called ARTI, and it's an action research tool where teachers record their plans for their action research model, and then they record the steps and the progress they do as they go through that. So with that said, we have like 10 minutes for questions. So any questions from the audience? Okay, wait a minute. I got to bring the mic because they're recording this, so they want your voice on the mic also. So I get to run around. Yes.
Just operational, because of the tech problems. Is that video and slide deck available somewhere that we can access later?
I can make it available.
That would be much appreciated.
Where I'm going to put it, I'll put it in my Dropbox, but hang out afterwards. Do they have a place for me to put stuff for the session?
Yes, they do.
Yes,
Okay, then we'll put it there. I just have to figure out where it is. Okay, other questions?
we can do that.
I already did my running this morning.
The question is, how do we start if we don't have any model?
I feel like you could answer that in a couple ways. How do you start if you don't have a model? I think it comes back to looking at what, as a learning organization, what do you value? And what messages are you extending to teachers? Like, how do you want to get started? I'd say look at the models and think about where your teacher's kind of at with what you know within your organization about, what does student engagement look like, all the pieces that fit into good teaching, and what do you want? And then I'd say think about, framing the, which model, think through which model fits where you're at and where you want to be, and how that could communicate. As you see, they're all they overlap, right? But I would encourage you to think about, what is an easier way to communicate that so that your people understand and make it manageable. But I'd say a big part of it is thinking about what does your organization as a whole value, and start the conversation there. Because I personally wouldn't want to see is teachers saying, oh, it's just one more set of vocabulary or theory. Because when I first rolled out SAMR, people were like, it's like they didn't understand why it mattered. So what? Why do we have to read theory? Or I don't need you to know about this. It's like, well, so it's all about framing it in terms of, terms that are relevant and familiar to the goals you have.
For us, it was really what were the learner outcomes?
Yeah.
Because how are we going to make these learner outcomes to the rigor and to the engagement that we want our students to have? And that was key for us. And once teachers really focused on that versus the tool itself, that's where we saw the transformation and the redefinition.
Okay, and I'll jump in on this. When it comes to staff development, an approach that I found with working with the TIM model was, if we're working with a group of teachers, we picked on the Thinkfinity website because they have a lot of lesson plans. And we would take the model and go in and choose a lesson plan that you might want to use in your classroom. And now let's evaluate it according to the TIM. And where would you plot it? And then how would you move it? Then the conversation turns to, how do we move it up a level? What is the next level? How do we move this farther across the TIM? And the reason we picked on Thinkfinity, and teachers, when they're at first using, if you ask them to use their own lessons, they become very defensive. But those on Thinkfinity were created by other people. We don't know who they are. We have no emotional contact with those people. So it's easy to be critical of what they've posted. After they've gone through several, then they're willing to apply it to their own lessons. But it's, it helps break that ice of, don't tell me I'm doing wrong. So, and you have to deal with that in their emotions. Other questions? Yes.
Are any of you using all three models in your schools? And if so, how are you using each model?
I would say I tend to use more SAMR and TIM just because I find that it's easier for my adult learners to relate to and manage. And there's some great resources that talk about the TPACK model, and I'm fine with it, but what I really think that SAMR and then TIM elaborates on that kind of is he said in the video as well for those upper levels. And I really liked how TIM gives concrete examples of what is the teacher role, what is the student role, what does the learning environment look like? Because for some people, they need that articulated. Actually, let me say all people, because I think it helps, it helps me even to constantly revisit that stuff. But it's really looking at in terms of, what does it look like to be a student at this level, a teacher at this level, and as a collective at the various levels?
I did tweet out the matrix, if you did not get it, for the model as well. And it has a lot of great resources for teachers on there. And that's what I think a lot of times people just need to see some examples of that. So if you follow some of those resources, I think that's really going to help your teachers, show them some concrete examples of what they can do with specific content area and take it from there.
I think all three are good models, and my suggestion would be to look at each of them a little more carefully and see which one just kind of resonates with you and your faculty and your teachers. The strengths, I think, to any of these models are that it gives you a larger framework to fit in the use of technology, the integration of technology, and it takes the focus off of the technology itself and puts it on student learning in any of the models.
Okay, any other questions? Oh, yes. Oh, did you have one? Before I run over there.
Have any of you found that it's difficult to get school principals to accept these and use them?
I think it probably varies, from building to building, just like anything else in education does, whether the person's receptive to it or not and what their background is. I don't think there's any kind of blanket thing we can say about that, at least in my experience.
We start with our administrators because as a building leadership, we have to say your buy-in is completely important to us in order for us to move forward here. So we do a ton of PD with our administration to make sure that they understand the concepts that the staff will go out and do. So I think they're just such a key player to model. So we do not have that problem.
Yeah, and our principal, during like our mid-year whole faculty meeting, or presentation, did a presentation on the different levels of the SAMR model. And I really do believe you have to find ways to have leadership embed it in other things they're doing. And that's challenging. I think that's challenging, but it's necessary to draw the connections.
Have you had any experience or heard of any case studies of this done cross-culturally or say outside of the United States in, say, Africa or Latin America? Or does it matter?
Well, I know TPACK's been used internationally, and if you go to the tpack.org website, you'll find they have a whole bibliography of papers and studies and articles and so forth, and you can find some information about it. Particularly in Asia, it's been used.
Okay, well, I think we're out of time, if I'm not mistaken. Look at my clock here. Yes, we are. Well, we got 2 minutes, but we'd like to thank you for coming. If stop any of us afterwards, I'm sure we'll be here. Glad to have a conversation about any and all the models. I know I show the models when I'm doing staff development. I talk about all three of them, and people gravitate to one or the other, whichever, seems to fit what you like. So remember, it's a roadmap to help you go someplace in the future, just so you're not sitting still thinking that you're there, because you're never there. The road just continues going someplace. So thank you, and have a great conference.
Yeah.